Close your eyes. It's After Images.
You're listening to After Images, a podcast for cinephiles that takes a deep dive into moving images. Each episode features a special guest who is invited to explore a film of their choice. After Images is hosted by film writers Frank Bouleg and Marisa C. Hayes. Welcome to our end of the year bonus episode on After Images podcast. As 2025 draws to a close, we are joined by a number of returning guests, admired authors, screenwriters, and producers who share some of the films and television series that they enjoyed the most this year. In order of appearance on the episode, we're grateful to welcome back authors Ramsey Campbell, Vajra Chandrasekera, Arkady Martine, Vivian Shaw, screenwriter and television producer Harley Peyton, author Jen Fawkes, screenwriter and author Peter Atkins, author William Boyle, and screenwriter and author Stephen Volk. Welcome, everyone, to our end of the year bonus episode of After Images podcast. We are joined by a handful of guests who are writers, filmmakers, script writers, and other moving image and arts professionals. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Tonight, we're going to begin with author Ramsey Campbell. Ramsey, thanks for joining us. Can you tell us about your selection, The Moor? And we understand that this film was actually inspired a lot by your own writing. And it's interesting that you were attracted to this film and that it grabbed you. So let us know why.
Well, hell, I didn't know it was inspired by me. I know Paul Thomas, who wrote it, says he likes my stuff, which is very kind of him. Okay, well, I'm guessing that I may be turning some of our merry band onto this film because it's not that easy to spot. It is being streamed, I believe, and it's available on a kind of quasi-official American DVD. But I mean, it really deserves better than that. I mean, good though that is, it really does deserve a good Blu-ray. So let me tell you about it. It is a 2025 British horror movie, written, as I say, by Paul Thomas, directed by Chris Cronin. And it starts off as what appears possibly to be a crime movie, with a young girl telling her younger boyfriend, that is friend who is a boy, not boyfriend as such, to distract a shopkeeper while she pinches some sweets. She duly does. He disappears. 25 years later, the rest of the film takes place. Now, I have to say that even that opening scene, which is a 5-minute take, there's a sense of real uneasiness about it. There's a sense that this is not merely a crime or abduction movie. The use of space, of sound, camera movement in particular, sets us up already to expect something, something wrong, something additional to what actually the abduction that takes place. And well, I mean, in simple terms, 25 years later, the young woman, now grown up, has a podcast, is approached by the father of the boy who was abducted, who turns out to have been almost certainly the victim of a serial killer, and his body is somewhere up on the moor. The father wants her to help him publicize the situation and ultimately to find the corpse so he can find some kind of closure, or at least that appears to be the situation, though it isn't necessarily so. That said, it very gradually introduces a supernatural element. And I have to say, I don't know of a recent horror movie that is so rooted in what I would say is the classic prose supernatural horror story. I mean, it accumulates details of dread to the point where, most films by the halfway mark would have gone, if not over the top, certainly they would have introduced something a lot more explicit than this film does. What I admire about it particularly is its reticence, restraint, images that, dare I say, lesser filmmakers would blow up into a set piece. here are just there and convey a sense of wrongness. There's something wrong about the sheep on the moor. There's something wrong about the carvings on the stones. There's something about the moor itself. I mean, it's a classic bad place movie. In fact, in the great tradition, the landscape is as much a character as the people on it, and there's a sense of mounting menace that I actually don't know where I've seen anything like this very recently. I've now seen it twice, and it's moving its way up my list of favorite horror movies. And the more I think about it, the more I watch it, the more convinced I am that I've never seen very many films that do it quite like that before. There's an extraordinary moment toward the climax. I mean, the climax, I suppose, does give us our one sort of not over the top moment, but explicitly physical horror moment. Let's say the tent scene. I'm not going to say more than this because I want you all to see the film if you haven't already. But suffice it to say that while we do get the moment of physical horror, the real terror of that scene is something else entirely. And actually, I think there's no question that I'm seeing and hearing an echo of Algernon Blackwood there. Specifically the Willows, the wrong person has come back. I'll go no further than that. But there's a moment where, how can I put this without ruining it, that where it becomes clear that something is horribly wrong with the animals on the moor. And we get a line of dialogue establishing this or underlining it. Now, most directors, I think, would make this a moment of panic, if not terror. But it's almost conversationally rendered as though, it's just a confirmation of all that has been gathering throughout the course of the film. And I mean, this is like sort of M.R. Jamesian restraint, it seemed to me. And that really characterizes the entire film. It does end on a note of utter supernatural horror. But even that is not that graphic. It's just oppressive and terrifying. I mean, well, there's some of what I thought about the movie. You will sense my enthusiasm, I hope.
Has someone else seen the movie?
Sadly, no.
Yeah,
Though
well,
I very
off
much
you
want
go
to
then,
now.
guys. Off you go.
I think we are going to very
Yeah, I
shortly.
have homework
That
now.
sounds amazing.
And I love that you brought up Algernon Blackwood, because it just so happens coincidentally that I was going through his entire oeuvre as we watched the film. And I know that you've written an introduction to one of the anthologies of his work and that you're a fan of his writing. And I feel like, at least in some countries, he tends to be somewhat overlooked in favor of, say, I think people know M.R. James better than they do Blackwood. So what do you think there is that's really specific about Blackwood that is echoed in this film, aside from that sort of tension of place and...
Oh, that in particular, the sense of the landscape as being innately supernatural, that's crucial to many of Blackwood's greatest stories. And I think it's here again. And I mean, the fact that I don't think there are any special effects to speak of in the movie, apart from the very occasional manifestation. I mean, I think, as far as I can see, the scenes on the moor are simply using the landscape, and it looks to me like maybe there's some fake fog, but not a whole lot. I mean, it looks like it's a place that you would almost immediately get lost in if you didn't know where you were going, which again is central to the film. I mean, theoretically, it's a landscape. It's flat. You can see for miles where you can't necessarily see the lot. But that doesn't matter. That's not going to help you. In this film, nothing will.
The moor appears to be something of a maze without walls, which people get lost. But so there's this feeling of a space that is something of a desert. But I was also interested in the fact that there is a relationship to deep time. You've got the feeling that the haunting is going really far back in time, and that it is omnipresent in this space, isn't it?
Very much so. And I think maybe there's a tiny echo there of Nigel Neal or Lovecraft or both. But again, I never get the sense of imitation. It's much more a question of taking the tradition and developing it in its own way, which I think it does magnificently.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you so much, Ramsey Campbell. I hope that everyone will have an opportunity to see them more.
Yeah.
Our next guest is Vajra Chandrasekera, author and podcast guest. Thank you for returning, Vajra. And
thank you for having me.
yeah, it's such a pleasure. And you suggested, or your choice this year is Antrim, the 2018 film directed by David Amito and Michael Licini.
That's right, yes. And as Ramsey was saying, this is another film that is very place-oriented. It's all set in a forest. So, and it's a very odd film in some ways because of the way that it kind of reached the public consciousness. It was made in 2018, but it went viral on TikTok in the early months of the pandemic. So this has, I think, left a lot of people having a somewhat mixed reaction to it because a lot of people watched it and didn't find it as scary as the marketing led them to believe, and that led them to to dislike it, whatever. But this is one of those classic movies that you would describe as a love letter to horror, I think, because there are so many references to other films in it. It's a cursed film movie, which is like one of my favorite genres of fiction, which is both in prose and in film. So it's a mockumentary titled Antrim, the Deadliest Film Ever Made. And that's the 2018 film, which purports to be a documentary about this fictional 1979 film called Antrim, which is the cursed film. So in the documentary, the film Antrim was first screened in Europe in the late 70s through the 80s, leading to various mysterious accidents. Theaters burned down, audiences spontaneously combusted, etc. Festival directors who rejected the film from festivals mysteriously died within hours of sending the rejection. So we have this like kind of 8 minute, like the whole film is about like an hour and a half, but there's like the first 8 minutes is the documentary that has this history, like with like talking heads and film experts giving this little history of like the film's disastrous like screening history. And they're like, okay, now we have found like the film has been lost since the 90s, but we found it and we're going to now show it to you in its entirety. And there's a little warning sign with a legal sign with titled legal notice with a 30-second countdown telling the audience they have 30 seconds to leave if they don't want to watch the cursed film that will kill you, which is all great. It's good fun. And with all this build up, right, as like a horror fan, you expect the cursed film to be something extremely violent and gory, because I think like one of the obvious antecedents to this would be John Carpenter's Cigarette Burns from I think 2006, 2005. Um, and in that, the cursed film in that is a film called La Fin Absolue du Monde, which is kind of an arty snuff film where an angel gets its wings ripped off, and it's supposed to be very frightening and harrowing to watch and traumatizing, and that's kind of the way the curse of the cursed film works. But in Antrim, like all this build up leads you to expect something of the same, but what you actually get is a very kind of sweet and sad film of two siblings. So the film is supposedly made in the 70s, so it looks like a film from the 70s. It's very nostalgic, retro looking. It's about these two kids, basically an older teenage girl called Orly and her little brother, a young boy called Nathan. And the story is basically the story starts with their mother driving these two kids to the vet to have the dog put down. And the dog, Maxine, is being put down because we find out later because she bit the little boy. Um, but the little boy has already forgiven the dog for biting him. So he asks his mother if the dog is in heaven now. And she says, no, she was a bad dog, so she doesn't get to go to heaven. It's a terrible thing to say to a small child. So this unsurprisingly gives the little boy nightmares and puts him in increasing emotional distress for weeks, possibly months, until his sister comes up with this very unusual plan to try to give her little brother closure. So she takes him camping to a forest, and she tells him this forest contains the entrance to hell, and we're going to dig a hole into hell and find the soul of our dog and free her so that she can be released and you can stop having nightmares. To this end, she has built up this entire elaborate backstory. She's made a fake satanic grimoire. She's drawn little pictures of demons. She's invented a whole sequence of rituals and prayers and elaborate backstory. And she tells him all this is very real, and they're going to travel together into hell. So her plan is to kind of pick a spot, dig a hole, work through the rituals, and then pretend to find the dog's collar, and then lead her brother into believing, okay, now if we take this collar and leave the forest, the dog has been freed from hell. So it's obvious that she cares for him very deeply. It's very sweet, more than a little macabre, but she's also a teenager with a clear bent for dark fantasy. So she's telling him the story, and she's very indulgently letting him drive parts of this narrative. For example, he's taking all this very literally and very seriously. So when he says, "Oh, we're now in the third level of hell, the fourth level of hell," she does a yes and, as if it was improv or a role playing game. So they're kind of playing this game together, but he's inhabiting the fantasy and responding to it as if it were life or death, and as if the soul of his dog was really at stake. So this is very cute at first, and then the dangers of the real world kind of intrude, because it turns out that the forest they're in is a suicide forest where people, go to kill themselves, and they interrupt a suicide in progress, which doesn't actually take place because they do interrupt it. But then they find that there are a couple of predators in the forest, a very Texas Chainsaw kind of pair of cannibals who are capturing people and cooking them alive in a bronze Baphomet statue. So this gets over the top very, very fast.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, and it's they find a gun, obviously. So the gun, the cannibals, the bronze Baphomet, and all of this plays out in ways that I think anyone who has ever seen a film could probably predict, which is fine. That's the main plot of the film, and I'm not spoiling the basic parts, but I am spoiling the ending because it's because you kind of have to talk about the film. The ending is that the big sister ends up unknowingly pointing the gun at the little brother, and the film ends before she fires the shot. So you don't actually know if she fires the shot or not. And now the popular law of the film, which was something that the filmmaker said in interviews and then has kind of went viral along with the film on TikTok and so forth, is that you're supposed to count the shots in the film and figure out if she has a bullet left in the gun or not, right? But the film has been very deliberately made in such a way that no matter how you do it, it's ambiguous, right? Because there are 5 shots fired, but the gun was found abandoned in a suicide forest. Presumably, someone used the first bullet. At the same time, there's 1 shot that may have happened off camera. So even if that were not the case, it's quite possible that bullet was used. So this kind of Lady and the Tiger ending, which traditionally always in horror means the tiger, like means she shot her brother. That's where the fictional anthem ends, and then we go back to the documentary, while the credits roll, where they go over like a lot of the kind of extra details of the film, like there are all kinds of demonic sigils that appear in various parts of the film, and they're like, oh, a mysterious third party has spliced like frames from a snuff movie into this film, so you get these brief flashes of a couple of young people being tortured or whatever, but they're like still frames, like very brief shots in the film, so you don't really get a sense of the progress. You could be seeing like the adult children in hell, maybe, but it's not explained. So I think like what really struck me about this film is that like the flaws of the film and the way that this film gets dismissed is about the kind of the false authenticity of the fake 1970s film, because people are like, oh, this is not scary enough, because you've seen this before, like this is like the 17th Cursed film, you've seen this here, but also there are various kind of technical like flaws in the film, like for example the credits are in Cyrillic, but the actors are speaking English in an American accent, so like you're trying to come off like this film was made somewhere in Europe, but like why are the kids speaking English with American accents? So there's stuff like that where I can't tell how much of that is real and how much of that was because it's a very low budget film. It was a very low budget film. It was made with a crew of 3 and a budget of like $35,000, shot inside a month. in a forest that somebody's private estate that they managed to wrangle permission to enter. So what I love about this is that it's an incredibly genre-aware film, with its direct references to Ringo, to Texas Chainsaw, to cigarette burns, and the way that I don't think the film actually, like, obviously the film was made in such a way to kind of give a new generation the Blair Witch experience. So is this real? Is this not? For the TikTok generation. But at the same time, it's also made in such a way, I think, that you don't actually need the suspension of disbelief at all, because you can see it as this very kind of lovingly made film about the dangers of fantasy. Because this is a story about, like, in the same way that the story is about the cursed film that affects you, it's actually about the sister, Orally, who starts off as the storyteller, right? She's the one who controls the narrative for the film. She's the one telling her brother the story and guiding him deeper and deeper into delusion, it turns out. And ultimately, she's the one who gets taken over by her own story. So it is a cursed story, but the cursed story is actually the one in the story and not the frame story itself, because she ends up succumbing to the story that she thought she was telling, which I think is the most charming part of any kind of cursed narrative story, is when the storyteller themselves is the one being caught up in it rather than the audience. So yes, very low budget, very very shaky in some places, but very, very, I think, lovingly made, which is like why I was so struck with it.
But there's also one inspiration is this mysterious movie called The Dining Room or There Is Nothing, which the director apparently greatly admires. And
yes, I read about that, but I haven't seen this.
It is. Well, I had to check because I was wondering. It's this yet another level of metafiction, and that doesn't really exist. Actually, it does. Apparently, it only runs for 1 minute. So there we are. So
right.
we can watch it when we finish the podcast. We all go watch The Dining Room or There Is Nothing, and we may never be the same again.
Squeezing that in before I go watch the Moor.
Yes, yeah.
Beyond the narrative aspect of the film, I was very struck, and I have to say, even more convinced by the beginning of the cursed movie that puts you in a very other dimensional environment, very hypnotic, very dreamy. I thought they did a very good job with this introduction into the universe of the 1970s film. What do you think of the style, the approach of the filmmaking, and the use of the music too is very strong in the film?
Yeah, the soundtrack is especially good. There's a very sort of haunting vocal track that gets reused a lot, which kind of sticks in your head after a while. They mess around a lot with both the footage and the audio to kind of like to make it seem aged and damaged, which is also part of the frame story of how there have been these other clips spliced into it and various demonic symbols etched onto it and so forth. But I think it's also very telling that like this whole thing is about like a dog dying, and like that's actually a very affecting kind of like opening scene, like because like a small child watching like their pet being put down. It's also, I think, like telling that so many cursed films set the actual cursed films in the 70s. That's also true of Cigarette Burns. It's like that's a 90s, no, the 2000s film about another 70s cursed film. So I think there's a strong belief in the 21st century that many films of the 70s are clearly cursed.
I'm just wondering if our Ghost Watch creator has seen the film.
No, I haven't seen it. Sounds really intriguing and a bit mad. In a good way.
I just say one thing, incidentally. I don't know if it's only me, but halfway through your account of the film of Antrim, a disembodied hand appeared on the right of the screen and took a book off the shelf.
See, this is the sort of thing that happens.
Indeed.
Maybe this is a haunted Zoom.
Yeah, it's a curse podcast we're doing today. Has anyone else seen that film?
Sadly, no, but I will now.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Multiple interest in Antrim. Thank you so much, Vajra.
Thank you. We are now moving on to Arkady Martine, who's going to tell us, Arkady Martine, who's going to tell us about the new Nosferatu movie from 2024.
Oh, yeah. So I actually feel like, first of all, thanks for having me. And also, it's a delight to go third on this because I actually get to riff off of both of you because so I have been obsessed with the old Nosferatu movie, the one from the 1920s, for a very long time. It was one of the first like horror films I watched in as a small child because I had a peculiar childhood. So and then of course there's Shadow of the Vampire, which does Nosferatu as a sort of cursed film in a really weird way. But so the 2024 remake is remarkably faithful in spirit to the 1920s version, and that's kind of what interested me about it. And both at first last year when it came out made me a little bit wary of seeing it because I tend to not love oh, it's old, we should just make a new version for the TikTok kiddies. But which of course this isn't. It is very much a deeply loving tribute. And it's one that Viv and I rewatched like yesterday, just so that I remembered all the interesting bits. And I spent a lot of time thinking about the incredibly clever uses of lighting, the absolutely beautiful geographical set pieces, and the framing that the director and the editor are using to not feel as if you are in a horror film from the 1920s, but to evoke the same kind of slowness and attention to atmosphere and attention to like visual framing that isn't as much part of the vocabulary of modern horror films. I spent a bit of time thinking like, have I seen this shot in The Seventh Seal somewhere? Is that what I'm reacting off of? And I just love the use of architectural framing in that film. And it's also just like a delightful vampire story. It's played absolutely straight. There's no twist. There's no nothing. It's just there are vampires. They have plague powers and are mysteriously sexy, but also really gross at the same time. And if you go and try and do real estate deals with them, your town is in trouble. So maybe don't, even if it seems like a good idea because you want money to support your mysteriously crazy wife. So the things that I keep returning to are the sheer delight that everyone involved in this film seems to have taken with performing it, with shooting it, with creating the color palette that switches between this kind of Vermeer-esque, lit only by candles, and a really desaturated, everything is gray-blue, which feels almost like a echo of a black and white film, deliberately, without being one. It's not a gimmick, it's just a tribute. And I think I come back to this film when Franca Marissa asked what film had I watched that I really liked in the past like year. I came back to this one because it wasn't show-offy. It was getting to do all the things that someone had dreamed about doing. And
shooting at France.
Yes, and I mean like it's just so deliciously everything that Egger, the director, had ever wanted to do with a horror film. It felt that kind of obsession that you have when you're 12. And since I share some of that with Nosferatu, I had oh yeah, if I was ever going to remake it, I'd want it to look like this. So this deep sense of satisfaction about it. And also it's both gross and pretty, which is hard to do. I feel that that's something that a lot of visual horror media aims at and does not usually achieve, at least for me. Either far too much pretty or far too much gross. But this hit square in the middle for me, and I was delighted again watching it yesterday. So that's the film that I think, if you skipped it because you thought it was like yet another schlocky remake, don't.
Yeah, I suppose that kind of merging of the beautiful and the gruesome, I would associate with, well, particularly Mario Bava, actually. More an Italian thing than perhaps, and I guess the Argento of Suspiria as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a great fan of the Murnau, by the way, to come back to Nosferatu. But yes, I do like the Eggers quite a bit. I thought one of the things it captured that we'd almost certainly lost for a long time was the vampires being actually monstrous. Because
Yes.
we increasingly have the sort of humanized vampire for a while, and this seems to be trying to, or been more than trying for me, to recapture the original sense of supernatural dread and horror. So yeah, I'm certainly in favor of it.
I think in a way,
do you think? Sorry,
go ahead.
just a quick one on what Ramsey just said. Do you think that idea of making the Nosferatu so monstrous looking alienated some of the audience because there was a feeling, because we've seen the romantic Dracula and the seductive Dracula for so many years, it's become almost a cliche, and that part of the modern audience thinks, well, if I saw him in the street, I wouldn't be attracted towards him. I'd run like crazy. So it's kind of like they missed that seductive side of him, because nobody surely would look at that and be attracted towards it. You know what I mean? So it was a bit of a dangerous kind of ploy, wasn't it?
But
Yeah,
equally,
I mean,
honestly,
yes,
Shrek,
but
nobody's
so
gonna
like,
go. Oh, sorry.
yeah, so Viv and I got to go for completely unrelated to Dracula reasons to Romania earlier this year, and they've done a brilliant job of making this particular Orlok look exactly like the paintings of Count Dracul. So who was, I mean, clearly peculiar looking, but in terms of facial hair, stature, and general style, very much attractive to, or portrayed as attractive to his compatriots. So I had some of that sort of background, but also I think by not having a sexy vampire, you can let the attraction of evil be sexy in and of itself. And that's what this film, I think, succeeds at doing, if you're willing to like sit with it for a second, is that it's not the physical attraction, though this is a very physicalized film. Like a lot of the subtext in the Murnau is very much text here. But it's
subtext is for cowards, etc.
Yeah, yeah. Put the fucking on screen. But it lets you like see, okay, no, he's not physically appealing, but he is absolutely appealing. He's compelling. He is the
But don't you
sexuality
think
of
that's
transgression and the sexuality of death.
But don't you think that argument is a little bit of an intellectual? I think it's a really good one, but it's an intellectual argument for the mainstream audience. That's what I'm saying.
I am afraid I'm not the mainstream audience.
Me neither. I don't think I am. But I'm just curious. I'm just curious because it's kind of split audiences. I mean, I loved it, and I will watch it again repeatedly. But it didn't seem to satisfy some audiences who wanted that. Well, what I think
it closes off. It closes off a group of people who think they know what they want from a vampire film, and it's just not for them in that way, which I actually kind of admire, because one of the reasons that I was wary of this film was thinking it would be kind of centered on mass appeal in a way that for me would ruin the tribute to the Murnau version. So I'm glad when people take risks, even if it does mean that you don't have as much of an audience or as big of an audience.
You have to also admit that the 2024 Nosferatu is the sexiest Nosferatu compared to his predecessors,
Oh
because
yeah, absolutely.
at least he doesn't have the bunny fangs, which
He
is
does not have the
He does
bunny
not have the
fangs.
bunny fangs.
Actually, we don't know. We never get to see his dentition very clearly.
Mm.
He could have bunny fangs.
Have you seen the Werner Herzog version of Nosferatu?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
yeah, it's really good.
yeah,
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love that.
The perfect vampire. But he was a vampire.
I think there was a 2023 Kickstarter like version of this as well with Doug Jones as Orlok. I have
Oh,
not seen this,
really?
but Doug Jones as
I did
Orlok
not know that.
No.
sounds interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Doug
Yeah.
Jones would be fascinating in that role.
I really appreciate what you said about loving tribute, because I feel that that's very present this month as well with the release of Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein and the real adoration that he speaks of for Mary Shelley's novel and certain scenes that haven't been pictured yet, or just how he's lived with that material so long and to really bring that fandom somehow to life on the screen as well. And I feel like that was present also in Nosferatu. And it's just something good to keep in mind, regardless of how one might feel about the final product, that I feel there was so much love and respect in the craft.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice.
You talked about the saturated grey blue that almost gave me a memory of watching it in black and white.
Yes.
I was hard pressed to think of it being a color film, but I don't think you can imagine the Guillermo del Toro Frankenstein in black and white. You just can't imagine it. Whereas you can the Nosferatu.
And he fully admits that he's also bringing Latino culture to the Frankenstein myth, and that those merge because that's his own, imaginary world. Yeah. But I think Eggers is much more the folk horrorist with those lovely grays, as you mentioned, and that kind of atmospheric fog and architecture being so important.
Yeah, the frame shots, just using architecture as frame for characters who almost become statuary. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Arkady Martine.
Thank you.
Much. And I think now we're continuing our journey to hell with Vivian Shaw, who's going to tell us about an animated series called Has Been Hotel.
Hi. First off, I'd want to tack on to what Arkady was saying. I love very much about the new Nosferatu that part of it was filmed using Bran Castle in Hunadora, which is one of the Dracula castles. There's 3 of them. That's one of them, as the exterior for Count Olaf's castle. So, I mean, I've been there. It really does look like that. And it was really special that they managed to pull some of that in. And also the fact that Willem Dafoe got to play the not Van Helsing character when he was playing Count Orlok in Shadow of the Vampire, as he was playing Max Schreck playing Count Orlok in Shadow of the Vampire while Murnau was shooting it. It's so meta. It's wonderful. It's like vampires all the way down. It delighted me. But Has Been Hotel I was not expecting to like it. I first came across it actually because I was on Tumblr, as you are, and I read somebody having an absolute conniption about this series and saying how much they detested it and how it was so completely predictable and all the characters were this person was really upset about it. So I was like, okay, I got to go see this. It is an animated web series that's produced by somebody called Vivian Medrano, otherwise known as, I believe, Vivzy Pop. And it's clearly a passion project for her. She's been working on this for a while. I'm only going to talk about the first season because the second one is not fully released at the moment, so I've only seen part of it. The idea is that it's set largely in hell. Heaven and hell are real. And on Earth, when sinners die, they go to hell, and if they're extremely bad, then they can get to be something called an overlord, which gives them power in hell. So they don't actually have the world's worst time down there. They actually kind of have some fun if they're bad enough. But there's this constant influx of sinners into hell, and therefore hell is getting overpopulated. And heaven doesn't like this. Heaven doesn't like the idea that there's this whole bunch of people down in hell who might at some point decide they want to get back at the people in heaven and or do something about the fact that there's this hilarious discrepancy between the way people are treated. So Heaven sends down every year a set of avenging angels called exorcists, and they basically decimate hell's population. This happens every year. It's just this thing that's been happening for many, many years now. They expect it. The story is set largely because the princess of hell, Charlotte Morningstar, Lucifer's daughter, who goes by Charlie, decides she doesn't want this to happen. She doesn't want her people to get decimated by these angels with their stabby swords every year. She thinks this is bullshit. So what she wants to do is try and prove that sinners in hell can be redeemed and they can get up to heaven on their own and therefore control the population of hell organically, as it were. So we don't actually need to do the smitey and the stabby and all that. And so she tries really hard to figure out a way to make this happen. And the way she's come up with is this hotel, the titular has-been hotel, wherein people who are sinners in hell, they can go to the hotel, they can go through a sort of self-help classes and therapy, and they can learn to be better people, and they can redeem themselves, and they can pop back into heaven, and everyone's happy. And everyone except for Charlie and her girlfriend in hell thinks this is complete and utter bullshit. It will never work. So this is how the whole first season is set up, is the people in hell who are involved in this project are sort of trying to make it work because they don't want the exorcists to come down and exterminate them any more than Charlie does. They don't think it's going to work. She does. She's like the most annoying character in the entire thing because she is the goody-goody. She's like, I think the best of everybody. And she sings. Everyone else is like, yeah, we know she's full of shit, but at the same time, maybe she's got a point. We could try it. So it's a wonderful version of the heaven versus hell dichotomy. It's a wonderful like exploration of what it might mean to have a completely different kind of theology that's based on a weird retribution that part of heaven knows about and part of heaven doesn't know about. And I love it because it's completely opposite to my own theology, and I play with this a lot in my own fiction. So I had a great deal of fun reading it, and I mean watching it and reading it, and I really thought that it was visually unlike anything I've ever seen, other than possibly back when Jonan Vasquez was doing Invader Zim and Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. It's that kind of hyper stylized visual effect, and it works really, really well. And also the songs are pretty damn good.
It's distressing that the songs are as good as they are.
She's a music person.
Yeah, no, when Viv was first watching this in like January, February last year, I was doing the busiest part of my day job life. So I would come back home at like 8 p.m. and there would be weird animated singing. And then I realized how good the songwriting was and how many different genres, ranging from sort of classic 1920s blues stuff all the way through very modern pop. There's electro swing. And it's just so cleverly done, and it annoys me how much I like it, which I think it might be getting at also. But these are not the kinds of characters that I usually care about, and I end up caring about nearly all of them a great deal.
And it's clear that the writers are not only very smart, but they're aware that they have painted themselves into some corners, and therefore they have had to think about really intelligent ways to get themselves out of it again. And while I will not talk about what's happening in season 2, I will say that it's clear that they have read their Hellblazer, because one character is in a situation where he really needs to get himself out of something that does not seem that there is any way out of it. And the way it appears that he is getting himself out of it is very clearly influenced by a specific part of the John Constantine Hellblazer, of which I thought was just like, oh my God, you guys are so smart. Thank you.
We're so delighted that you suggested an animated series, because recently we've been watching a lot of animated series, and we feel like right now is this kind of golden era for wonderful adult animation. I'm just wondering, are you an animation fan in general, or did you come to the series kind of haphazardly? How did you find out about it?
I like animation a lot. I mean, I have watched all the Disney films. I'm a Pixar fan, but I've always loved animation. This is something that I didn't even know existed until I saw this person ranting about how much they disliked it. And honestly, if somebody is that passionate about something they dislike, I want to know why. And a lot of the things that they were saying seemed to be fairly specious. So I went to go see it and I was like, oh no, this is great. I love this. I'm going to roll around in this.
Fantastic.
What I found interesting is the fact that it's both very sweet and very cruel simultaneously.
Yes.
It's like Uniquity meets Clive Barker somehow.
Yes, yes. It's very Clive Barker.
We actually have someone here who knows and has worked with Clive Barker. I mean, are you a fan of animated series, Peter?
I mean, in principle, yes. Sadly, again, I have not. Is it Has Been Hotel?
Yeah, it's spelled Hazbin.
Okay. Oh, Has Been.
It's
Okay.
not clear even within the canon exactly why, because the character who is not actually Charlie names it the Has Been Hotel, and he doesn't explain it. Nobody explains it. It's sort of lampshaded in one of the episodes, but yes, it's a riff on Has Been, but I don't know anything more than that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, generally I'm an animation fan, sure. It's interesting. I mean, this sounds fascinating. I'm definitely going to watch it, and I have for my sins recently watched K-pop Demon Hunters like everybody else, because for the last 10 or 15 years I have not been overly pleased with a lot of animation, and I was worried that it was an age thing, a generation thing, that it's like, oh, it's a form that somehow loses appeal for older people. But despite its mass appeal, I thought K-pop Demon Hunters was pretty good. And again, so were the songs. So I'm very intrigued to watch this. I mean, especially because of the hierarchies of hell, which I've had a hand in here and there. So yeah, I'll be fascinated.
And I just love the show's wonderful color palette with so many pinks and reds. I absolutely adore it.
Looks as if it's on Amazon Prime in Britain, by the way.
Oh, what's that, Ramsey?
It looks as if it's on Amazon Prime in Britain, by the look of it. So I think we'll get it very soon.
Oh, good. So it's gone international. Excellent.
So we strongly recommend everyone to try and watch Has Been Hotel. It's very fun.
Great.
You can definitely try to learn the songs, and you can practice with the episode. No problem.
Thank you so much, Vivian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and our next guest is screenwriter, producer, and showrunner. I hope I've covered everything. Harley Peyton with Le Diplomat. And at the moment, there are 3 seasons. We are impatiently waiting for the 4th season.
Yeah, I think they're shooting it now, actually. Okay, first I have 2 random thoughts, which I always love doing, which have nothing to do with the Diplomat. First is that Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights trailers are currently on my top 10 movies of the year list. I just think they're so beautifully done, beautifully executed and edited. You have the Charlie XCX music. There's the whole question about how much story do you reveal, which always bothers me. And in the one that came up most recently, they basically tell the entire story. But for me, the most important part of that movie, setting aside what Fennell will do to the story we think we know, because I suspect it's going to diverge in some significant ways. Jacob Elordi's having a pretty good year, not calendar year, but a year, having played 2 monsters, Heathcliff next year and Frankenstein's monster this year. So Elordi, who is my 21-year-old daughter's favorite actor, is doing very, very well for himself. And the second thing is actually a movie that I'm seeing tomorrow. Same thing with regards to the trailer, and that's Hamnet. And I'm absolutely fascinated by this because I think if you talk about someone having a big year, you're talking about Chloe Zhao shepherding in a new Buffy the Vampire series, which is a particular interest of mine. But also going from winning an Oscar for Nomadland to the kind of gender-based sexism of The Rejection of the Eternals, which, by the way, is not a movie I loved, but nonetheless, the criticism of it seemed aimed in that direction and aimed at someone who dares to see their work as art, I think. And now with Hamnet, I think it's either her, PTA, who will win the Oscar for Best Director this year. because Hamnet, by all accounts, is an extraordinary movie, and you need to bring about 5 boxes of tissues. Even the trailer makes me start to almost weep. So I think that's something that's very interesting, and those are my two little bonus thoughts. The
Because
Diplomat is a television show. The Diplomat is, I call it a popcorn TV show.
Sorry.
It's aspirational television. It's created by Deborah Kahn, and her previous work all aims her toward this, I think, because it is a combination of Grey's Anatomy, West Wing, and Homeland. And those are all 3 shows where she worked in the writer's room. And it's about Kerry Russell as this newly made ambassador in the UK. It's her husband, Hal, who is an unpredictable foreign service man who you simply cannot trust. And there's a through line through all 3 seasons, which is an attack on a British aircraft carrier. And Rory Kinnear is wonderful as the prime minister, by the way. And you just have a series of suspects. It's Russian warlords, then it's the prime minister himself. And then finally it goes all the way to the American vice president, played by Allison Janney. And in one of the really wonderful ends to a season, which was the end of the 2nd season, at the very moment they discover that the American vice president is the culprit here, the American president dies, having heard the news. And so now Allison Janney, the culprit, is sitting metaphorically and literally in the Oval Office. And so the 3rd season basically follows what happens next. And what I love about the show, I once started, and I never finished, a paper called The Eroticism of Competence in the Films of Howard Hawks, which I still think might be worth doing. And the thing about it is there's a real erotic charge in watching people who are good at what they do. And it can be any number of things. It can be martial arts. It can be being a reporter. It can be, in this case, being a member of the Foreign Service. But writing smart people, I've always found, is really fucking hard. And Deborah Kahn does a wonderful job of following these people and also rather effortlessly transitioning from the sort of shop talk, which clearly has to be researched to know how to write, to the relationship talk, which she's so expert at, and then throwing in absurdity along the way. And to me, that's what makes the show so much fun, that you have that aspirational aspect, that you're allowed to think, well, maybe the people with their hands on the levers of power aren't all terrible, right? Which is probably a fantasy, but the show allows you to think that. And by the way, if you read, and I did just before this, interviews with Kerry Russell, she met a number of women who worked in foreign service, just to kind of research for her part, right? And that was her takeaway, that in fact, there are these people whose names we will never know who are doing this amazing work and have amazing attitudes toward it, although I'm assuming they've all been fired now during the Trump administration. But she discovered that there were people in there that were truly, Samantha Powers was one that she mentioned, that were truly admirable in her estimation, right? And so I thought that process that she brought into it was fairly interesting. And it's funny how even Kerry Russell's own background feeds into what this series is. When you start with Felicity, which I still think is one of the best shows ever, but then also Homeland, but also The Americans, and now you kind of go with that into The Diplomat, which to me is just a really, really fun television show. And I haven't talked to a single person who hasn't watched it and enjoyed it, because it's so well done. The performances are just expert, right? The writing's really great, and they're very good at twists, turns, and cliffhangers. I would only mention one thing about the 3rd season, without giving too much away. It's rare that I watch a television show and I go, that decision is inexplicable. And I would love to be able to talk to the showrunner to know why they did this thing. Because there is a romantic charge between 2 characters in the show, between Kerry Russell's character and David Gayassi's show. He plays the UK Foreign Secretary. And it's one of the best things of the first 2 seasons. It really is. And you keep waiting. There's a lot of will they, won't they, and you're waiting for them to get together, as in a way they should, because that's a kind of erotic competence too. And in the 3rd season, again, inexplicably, you're suddenly told 5 months later, which makes no sense. It's now 5 months later. I have no idea why. It wasn't like anything needed to occur in those 5 months. It's just 5 months later. And you're suddenly at a party, and you're suddenly seeing Kerry Russell with her new boyfriend, who is a British spy, played by Aidan Turner, who I'm a big fan of as an actor. But suddenly he's the boyfriend, and Austin Dennison, where there was all that chemistry between the two of them, he now has gone back to his ex-wife. It's so inexplicable to me. And when you see it, you kind of think to yourself, and knowing Kerry Russell, I know this is likely not true at all, but it's almost like the two actors didn't want to work together. I mean, I can't figure out a reason for the shift in the middle of the show. And it is the one unfortunate thing, I think, in what is a very good third season. They nail all the narrative, they nail all the plot development. They hang a lantern on that original sin, if you will, of who bombed the UK, warship, which becomes more of a MacGuffin than anything else.
Harley, you don't think
I find
that
it fascinating that they left the best relationship for one that, quite frankly, again, as much as I like Aidan Turner, was not nearly as interesting.
Harley, you don't think they were being super clever in that we know those things happen in life where you see someone connect with someone you think, what the hell are they doing? It wasn't that kind of thing?
Not really. And also, it's done in such an odd way. Just speaking of someone who's always trying to figure out how to write this stuff, it was done in such an odd way that it's 5 months later and there's a party. And the Kara Russell character is, at the party. And her husband, the kind of scamp, Rufus Sewell, is about to arrive at the party. And he witnesses this man, Aidan Turner's character, simply put a hand to her back, like very quickly. If you're looking down at your feet for a second, you will miss that. And then you'll really be confused.
That's crazy.
So they don't even shine a light on it in an interesting way. And for a show that's so well conceived, so well run, so well written, I loved, I don't know, Deborah Kahn, but I'd love to be able to ask her what the decision-making process was behind that, because there is a process and there's a writer's room. And at some point in that writer's room, they made the decision, we want to move her, as you said, Stephen, that we want to move her in a way that feels kind of organic and natural to us, because sometimes the person you think you're going to be with, in a way, it just isn't that person. And for various reasons, possibly quite political. Now, the fact that this guy that she's currently seeing turns out to be a spy is not great for her. But I mean, I found it fascinating. And
sounds clumsy.
Yeah, well, to be perfectly honest, about a show that I really like, it's wildly clumsy. And I don't.
To me, it sounds like someone got stuck on a plot point in working the season midway. That if the original plan had been to get, I haven't watched this at all.
Sure.
I'm just like doing narrative brain at it.
Exactly.
Like if these two characters have enormous amounts of chemistry and the original plan was that, okay, they're going to get together, but having them together screwed up everybody else in the writer's room, was trying to move other bits of the plot.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of. Otherwise, it just seems like an unforced error from what you're describing.
Yeah, I mean, it really does feel that way, and it's doubly unfortunate to me because David Gyasi happens to be black as the kind of UK Foreign Secretary. Obviously, Aidan Turner is not. And the fact of the matter is, based on their positioning within the UK power structure, they both have access to exactly the same information. So in other words, it's not like, well, we got to get her with this spy guy because that's how she'll learn A, B, C, and D. Yeah. We talk about narrative brain, right? Well, narrative brain would be a reason to do that. That because she's welcomed a spy into her bedroom, so to speak, that leads to a certain number of unfortunate incidents. But that doesn't really work either. So I'm just mystified. I don't know. I've tried to read about it or see where, and again, this rarely happens in anything I'm watching. And I'm usually perfectly open to unexpected turns of events, because I think that's one of the fun things as a writer, is to try to figure those things out. I mean, just like one of my favorite shows of the year is The Lowdown by Sterling Harjo, who is a kind of Native American auteur whose work I think is amazing, starting with Reservation Dogs and now with The Lowdown. There's all sorts of crazy things that happen in that show. But I never really paused to go, what were they thinking in the writer's room? That's not a thought that I usually have. Even if I'm watching, my daughter, who's 21, is the first to go to Nosferatu, but at the same time loves The Summer I Turned Pretty. So I end up watching both with her, which is a great deal of fun for me. And we've discovered a show called Maxton Hall, which I would highly recommend. And the crazy thing about it, it's about a prep school in England. It's a feeder school for Oxford. It's that YA vibe. It's the young, beautiful people. It's beautifully acted, really well written, much better, I think, than their American counterparts. But what's sort of weird about it is that it's all in German. It's from a German novel. And these are German actors, and they're speaking German, but they're in England. So it's sort of their payback for all those World War II movies where British actors were speaking with German accents, right? It's like, okay, we're going to reverse it. but that's another one of those shows where, I don't see, even a show like that where I guess you might sit there and think about the way certain narrative things are developed. I never would have had that thought. So anyway, that's my thumbnail about The Diplomat, which I still think, by the way, I mean, watching Alison Janney and Bradley Whitford, which is sort of a West Wing reunion, and watching the work that they're doing. I mean, Deborah Kahn is really expert at writing very big moments, but also writing very, very small moments, right? And those little things that just usually between lovers or couples or people who are married, or between diplomats, right? I mean, there's a guy in the Foreign Service whose girlfriend is in the CIA, and just the little moments, and how it really is about power, and it's about power whether it be in a relationship sense or in a business sense, and usually those two things in the show are always colliding. So that diplomat thing.
But concerning this relationship that emerges in the third season, as you mentioned, I mean, it's a series that collides world affairs with private affairs.
Yeah.
So, I was wondering if there was not also something. I mean, the private relationships mirror the state relationships, and vice versa. So I was wondering if that was not also a comment on the British-American love-hate relationship, possibly.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, but the fact of the matter is, and this is something you can't predict until you turn the cameras on, Kara Russell has far more chemistry with David Gyasi than she does with Aidan Turner. And I say this, Aidan Turner, a long time ago, I was trying to option these Sandman Slim books, talk about books that go to hell and give you a version of what hell can be like. And I always thought Aidan Turner would be the perfect Sandman Slim. I mean, he's a really wonderful actor. He did Poldark. I mean, there's some, but I mean, he's just very good. But no, she has far better chemistry with Gyasi. And I think it's really about Gyasi, who has this wonderful, really wonderful affect, which is both, he's very, very smart and very, very uncertain at the same time. It's a really interesting thing to project as a performer, but I find him riveting. So the two of them, I wanted to see more and more. But, let's not forget that Rufus Sewell is kind of the mistake she can't let go of. And that continues through all three seasons. And their chemistry is also quite something. I mean, I think Sewell is a wonderful actor. Although I did, and this is a classic thing in American television particularly, I saw Kara Russell do an interview with her old co-star from Felicity. And he was saying, yeah, I watched The Americans, and I was going, good Lord, is she having an affair with her father? Because Rufus Sewell, needless to say, as is often the case, is somewhat older than Kara Russell. But they're also great together. So I highly recommend it. And popcorn TV to me is not an insult. It's something that I really love. And it's a great show just to sit down and kind of wander through.
Yeah, we were grateful for your recommendation because we hadn't watched it and we binged the whole series. We absolutely loved it. But I completely agree with you. I was mystified by this gap in season 3. Everything had been so fluid from season 1 to 2. It was as if, you couldn't distinguish one season from the other. And then suddenly there's the time gap. There's also this strange relationship gap. And it feels like they just kind of dropped the ball, and there's...
Yeah, it was so weird. The second season was truncated because of the writer's strike. It was only 6 episodes. But the third season, they really had a chance to kind of put their boots on and do the whole thing. And that's why it's just so weird. It's almost like you wanted a narrator's voice to go 5 months later. But I mean, no, apparently.
I hate to say it, but is there, I'd say the obvious that everyone's thinking, is there a new producer?
No, Deborah Kahn is in firm control of the show as she should be.
Oh, right.
So there's no one telling her what to do. And there's no one certainly at Netflix is telling her what to do. I mean, there are circumstances where I could see that being how that might work. There's a show called Nobody Wants This, which is about the hot rabbi and the shiksa who falls in love with him. They brought in new producers for that show in the second season, 2 producers who'd worked on Girls. And you can tell how they, while not changing her vision of the show, you can really tell what they brought to it. But in this case, no, there is no smoking gun. Until I can corner Deborah Kahn at a cocktail party, living in the woods of the Northwest, that seems like an unlikely prospect. But should I ever have a chance to meet her, that's the first question I will ask.
We're going to hold you to that.
Thank you. And I will let you know what I find out.
Can I just say, I love what you said something about, I love writing smart people, and for the reason that Vince Gilligan gives about Breaking Bad. I saw an interview where he said, Walter White, he's so smart, that guy, Walter White. he'll come up with in an instant what it takes 10 people in the writer's room to spend 3 weeks thinking of,
Yeah.
And I get a similar satisfaction when you spend a couple of days coming up with one line of dialogue. That is so...
Exactly. Yeah. And particularly when it's professionally based.
Yeah.
Right. If you're writing about someone in, like, just in this world, there's
Yeah.
a speech that Rufus Sewell has to a kind of rival for the job of vice president in the third season, where he just dresses the guy down at a party. And I mean, it's one of the best paragraphs of dialogue I've heard all year. And it's because it's informed both with his inherent sort of wit and actually venom in this particular moment, but also just based on sort of kind of real politic in a way. They're going, wow, that is so fucking smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a real art, you know. And as you say, it may have taken the writer's room.
Yes, exactly. Don't we all wish we could do that?
Yeah.
We all
Or
have
Deborah
moments
Kahn,
we
just a
wish we
good
could
night
do
to
that.
do it. But whatever the case,
Yeah.
that's something I admire a great deal.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harley.
And it wasn't our intention, but prior to Harley, we'd mostly been speaking about horror films, and that was not intentional on our part. But moving into a different discussion of series and films, although there may be certain horrific aspects, and I'm thinking of Jen, who we'll hear from next, Jen Fawkes. You chose Liliana Cavani's The Night Porter, and I'm so excited. I love this 1974 film, and I love Cavani's work as well. So great to see you. Let us know, why did you choose this film this year?
Yeah, good to see you too, and really lovely to get to listen to all of you. It's funny because even though the film that I'm talking about is not a horror film, it is fairly horrific in the view of many people who watch it. I also have to say that Harley just referencing British films set in Germany in which British actors are playing German roles. That's this film. And so let's see, it's shocking that I hadn't seen, I would say, The Night Porter until this year. I knew that it was a heavy film, right? And so I think it's the kind of film you might, like, I maybe had to prep myself for a couple of decades before I was ready to watch. But I have been watching Dirk Bogarde films like a crazy person this year, really discovering. I knew some of his films, but I've just been like watching all of them because he is so fascinating to me as an actor, his face, what he does. And I'm also a huge fan of Charlotte Rampling. So and also this movie, it was made the same year I was, which I tend to love movies that were made the same year I was. That it just kind of seems to work out that way. But so anyway, so I'll just give you guys my take, a little rundown. So The Night Porter may be the most disturbing film ever made, but it is also visually, in my estimation, so rich and quite enchanting. And the unfolding of its events, they're achieved through what I would call a deft and delicate twining of past and present. And it is that twining that, for me, gives the film its energy. That is what propels the film forward. And for me, it is propulsive until a point where it is everything stops. Like about 20, 30 minutes before the end of the film, literally everything stops when the two main characters are like sealed in a room together, starving to death. But before that, if you have not seen the movie, so we're in Vienna. It's 1957. A former SS concentration camp officer is working as a night porter in an upscale boutique hotel. And he is working one night when a former prisoner who was in the camp where he worked as a guard walks in. The two of them, when she was just a teenager in the camps, had a sadomasochistic relationship. And at this point, this is 15 years later, she is married to a well-to-do American conductor, and she is traveling with him as he conducts a production of The Magic Flute. And so the moment that she walks into the lobby of Max's, her name is Lucia, the former prisoner, and Max is the night porter. The moment that their eyes meet, she walks into the lobby, and from that moment, their fate is sealed. The viewer knows this. Like, I knew it the first time I watched it. I was like, oh, So and these are both actors for me who have these phenomenal faces. Much of the film is very much image driven. It does not rely a lot on dialogue. The dialogue is sparse. Again, sort of like I talked about John Dielman last year. It has some things in common. It also has some things in common with what Arkady was saying about the architecture and the framing of the characters. This is very much a film it's Cavani being both a documentarian and a director of opera, which she became like, that's what she did for many years, and that was one of her main areas. There's a way in which everything is very staged, and the camera tends to be still until it isn't. So anyway, both after that one encounter, both Lucia and Max began traveling inward repeatedly, and continue to do this throughout the film. They are each reliving their experiences with each other in the death camp. So these highly staged flashbacks feel to me like documentaries of human dreamscapes, the way that they are filmed and composed. So the colors are really specifically muted, but rich and muted. And then like in the flashbacks, everybody's hair is tinted red, like everybody, for some reason, everybody's hair is tinted red. So the frames are confining, the sets are all decaying. The decor is like replete with reflective surfaces. And then there's often like a fuzzy background effect, all of which gives, I would say, like the effect of like extreme instability and extreme tension, but then like absolute like pageantry and sort of a celebratory like pageantry type vibe. So it is like, that's the kind of feel of these dream sequences. I would say that these flashback sequences that are incredibly integral to the film. So they both dream of this past time in their lives, and then eventually Lucia, astonishingly, ends up leaving her husband and coming to Max's small, squalid apartment and moving in with him. So giving up her life that she has established, right? So this movie investigates monstrosities, right? It is very interested in monstrosities, those that we are all not only capable of, but complicit in, as well as the indelible damage that we can and do inflict on other people, just inevitably by being alive. So through the lenses of war and love, which, love, maybe other people would say lust or obsession, rather than love. But for me, I do think that she makes a compelling case for this being a love story, like an actual love story, which many people would probably want to shoot me in the face for saying that. But she interrogates that monstrosity in this film with a directness few filmmakers that I have ever encountered would dare to. And she also implicates the voyeurism that's at the heart of filmmaking and film viewing. She implicates that as well in the monstrosity, I would say. So the film upends all kinds of power dynamics. From one of the most interesting plot points to me, which some people are like, that's so unrealistic, but is that these fallen Nazis are trying to excise their guilt by holding shadow trials at night, in which they find, confront, and then file away the only remaining witnesses that they can find to their atrocities they committed during the war. So Lucia is one of those witnesses, and Max ends up he is determined to save her. That is like the ending note. That's what happens at the end of the film. He will not let them take her and file her away. So the upending, the upending of power, in both. So at the beginning of the film, Max's subordinates who work for him in the hotel, they all help bring him down in the end. But I would say the greatest upending of power in the movie is that of Lucia and Max, because for me, in the present of the film. Now, while she was a prisoner, she was unquestionably powerless, like a powerless prisoner in a camp, and Max had all the control. But in the present moment of the film, for me, Lucia completely has the upper hand, and she's in control of most of what happens. Some people don't want to see it that way, and I totally understand why. Charlotte Rampling, her performance, she's perfect for the role. It's physicality, her face, her performance is what I would say people find most disturbing and most impossible to buy here. Like, this woman's motive, why she would do this. Indeed, even the Nazis, Max's fellow Nazis, are like, "What are you doing?" Like, they're like, "Why would you return to this context? What is the matter with you?" So the Nazis can't believe she's gone back to him. you know, whether, so I believe that we're all a product of everything that's ever happened to us. So whether or not we have choices is highly debatable for me. But Liliana Cavani grants Lucia, the character in this movie, for me, this great, if like ephemeral or potentially fantastical power of choice, the ultimate choice. She's the one that makes it. And that is what seals like she and Max's fate. For me. And then a note about Max, you know, in spite of his horrific crimes, which are, you know, not at all, you know, glossed over or anything in the film, he accepts both his own monstrosity and the fact that, as Lucia puts it at one point in the film, there is no cure for the perversity that lurks inside every human being. Most importantly, Max is ashamed of that perversity. He admits it aloud to his Nazi comrades that he's ashamed of, not that he wouldn't change, not that he would change anything, not that anything could ever be differently, but that he's ashamed of the perversity that we all share. And I think that is the teeny bit of sort of saving, you know, this little kernel of bringing Max into at least our apprehension as other people who understand and feel like the perversity, right? The call of the perverse. So in the end, you know, the tragic choices that Max and Lucia end up making as the film unfolds to re-inhabit the roles that gave them each the exact, if unfathomable to most other people, thing that they both need. For me, it's simultaneously very twisted and quite beautiful. But I can feel that way about it. So, I also want to say this was the first of Cavani's films that I had seen. I do plan to watch the rest of her narrative films, but I have watched her documentaries. Now, she has a documentary about the female Italian resistance fighters of World War II. And that directly generated her ideas for The Night Porter. You can see it right there in this documentary, in which many of the women who were prisoners in concentration camps, who she interviewed for her documentary, expressed, not directly, but sort of tacitly expressed their feeling that surviving was actually the harder. It was that those who died in ways had it easier, because in surviving the horror of that on either side, reintegrating into normal society is just, it's not conceivable. Like you cannot do it. And there are ways in which even if they want to remember, everyone else wants to forget, and they're just completely out of step with everything for the rest, they feel like, you know, for the rest of their lives. So I think I would recommend watching that documentary and the movie, like hand in hand. I did that, and I think it was great. She also has like a 4-part documentary on the Third Reich that she made at the same time as a very young filmmaker. But yeah, so that's probably enough of me talking. But yeah, that was my. But yeah, it was. I mean, it's disturbing as all get out. Don't get me wrong, but it's also incredibly fascinating. So.
I was really intrigued by the fact that you said that they are re-inhabiting the roles that they played during World War II, because I recently rewatched the film and I was struck by the performative quality that you find throughout the film. I mean, there is this mock trial that the Nazis are performing for themselves, but there are also all the references to the magic flute, and you can see the couple that Dirk Bogarde and Charlotte Rampling make in the film, being a reflection possibly of Papageno and Papagena in the magic flute.
Yes.
So I mean, did you have any thoughts about why the acting, the performing of a role is so important in The Night Porter?
Well, I think that, you know, as in the couple re-inhabiting their roles, I think there's a sense. So there is a sense, and I think this also plays into the composition and to the arrangement of the actors. They're often, especially in the flashback sequences, they are arranged like almost like puppets or dolls or figures on a stage or in a still frame, people in a painting. And so I think that one of the things that the film is continuously pointing at is that the lack of choice. As I say, we don't really have much choice if you want to really get down to it. If you really think about the way things work, we want to believe. Don't get me wrong. I want to believe I have choices as well. But the inevitability of the larger forces of history and geography and human, everything about, human emotion, it's those, we are at their whim. We are all operating at their whim. So there's a way in which I think, especially at the end, not to give the ending away, but they dress, they dress as they dressed during the war, him in his SS uniform, which he has had in his closet the whole time, and then her in the outfit that she would wear when they were together. He referred to her as his little girl, and they had this pink dress that she wore. As disturbing as that may sound, at the end of the film, they walk out. So Max he only goes out at night. He doesn't like to go out during the day. He really likes to stay inside during the day and go out at night. And when they walk out, they're starving. So they're very sort of shaky on their feet. And they look like dolls or puppets. They look like puppets moving down the street. And I think that, the whole movie presenting these people as playing these roles and as being controlled by other forces is really speaking to our lack of choice and how little potential control Lucia and Max had over any aspect of their lives, let alone whether or not they love each other, which to me, it seems that they do. But a lot of people would probably not want to hear that. I understand. So anyway.
Has anyone else here seen the film?
Yeah. I mean, I saw it 50 years ago because, unlike Jen, I wasn't made the same year as the movie. So, but I mean, so you reminded me of a lot of things in it that I'd literally forgot. Like, I'd forgotten almost that there's a plot, that he does need to decide to save her, and I'd forgotten all that completely. And the only things I remembered were the perverse delight they took in the performative aspects of this bizarre relationship. I mean, obviously, partly because it was on the poster and the trailer. One of the most striking images is Rampling in his hat with the crop or whatever. But the joy with which they moved into the light to look at each other, never mind touch each other. Yeah, it was creepy as hell watching it in 1976 or 70, whenever it was that it came out. I think I was 20 or 21. Yeah, and it's a striking movie, and I certainly want to see it again now. But it's an uncomfortable pleasure for sure. They're both fantastic. I mean, they're really great. And, there's always that question that is begged by, one can sympathize with Max or at least see where he comes from. There's tiny bits of humanizing. And there's always that little niggling question of, yeah, but if he didn't look like Dirk Bogarde, would we be as ready to accept the humanization? But
yes,
that's casting, so.
Well, that's true. And that reminds me of the Nosferatu discussion that we were, this earlier talking about Nosferatu and how a not physically attractive, suave looking vampire, doesn't have that same appeal. And of course, Dirk Bogarde does have that, he definitely has that. Yeah. But yeah, it is. I think that what you would be haunted by, right, would be those flashback sequences that she does Charlotte Rampling does the Marlene Dietrich style, the song, right? Song, but wearing only man's pants, suspenders, and the Nazi cap. And at the end of which, Dirk Bogarde gives her a human head in a box. So there's
a gift, the love gift, a little token.
As you do. So, I mean, but there is more to that film, and I was like, as I say, I think I probably didn't watch it because I was like, this is going to wreck me for weeks and I'll have to be on the floor and someone will have to pick me up. But I was, I've become more resilient in the last couple of years. And so anyway, but yeah, it's something. Now if you like delightful horror, if you're interested in I am unendingly. I actually just wrote a piece on the Sublime in Flannery O'Connor and Walter Tevis that will be appearing soon in the Cincinnati Review. So I've been thinking about delightful horror a lot. But anyway,
but wasn't it? I mean, forgive my naivety. Wasn't it extremely controversial at the time it came out? And was it because of the humanizing nature? You talk about Dirk Bogarde making the Nazi human Was that the root of the controversy, or you said he felt shame? Was that something that deeply offended people? That this character, that you could actually have a Nazi and he could express shame, or what?
I think it was more so Charlotte Rampling. It was I believe it was the presentation of Charlotte Rampling that really bothered people. But no, I think that was part of it too. So like Roger, like everybody panned it. It was panned all around. Like I can't remember. A female, was it Pauline Kael, said like this movie should have stayed in the dark, or this is not. I mean, it was roundly panned. Everybody hated it when it came out. Then there was a reevaluation 20-ish years later, when feminist scholars and female, I mean, she is see that the core of the film came from these women who she spoke to about being in concentration camps, one of whom kept going back every year for her vacation. She was a school teacher. Every year she went back to the concentration camp where she was kept. Every year for years and years and years. And she said, why? Liliana Cavana is like, interviewing these women. And she says, I just can't help myself. I have to go back there. Like I have to. And so that put this seed in her mind and Liliana Cavana's mind. And she started conceiving of the character. Most people find Charlotte Rampling to be the most, because a lot of people have said that she's not as well delineated, anywhere near as delineated as well as Max, because Max really does feel like we open with him. He's the one with the shadow trial happening as like the B story. And she just sort of pops in, and she's been in the US and she's married a man. She has made a good marriage. They're successful. They seem to be wealthy. They're traveling Europe. But you also get the sense that her husband refers to her as a creature 3 times. I mean, he's like, you're such a delightful creature, pat on her head. So her husband is kind of like, he treats her, he's like very patronizing, and he in ways is like reenacting that in ways for me, that childlike, oh, you sweet little thing, go in, let me do my work, that she knew with Max when she was an actual child. I mean, I feel like she was probably, she was a teenager when it happened. I mean, she wasn't like 8. She was more like, let's say 15 maybe or something when she went into the camp and she and Max began this, not completely unhealthy association that he, of course, drove. But I do also think that tiny bit of humanization, and some people have said too that they didn't buy because Max, like, he keeps his SS uniform in the closet, and they're like, oh, so he'd really, like, you don't think you would maybe you could keep it and also be ashamed of it? Is that something you can't even conceive of, people? Because I mean, I can't. I can't conceive, right? But I just mean, anyway. So it's disturbing on many levels, but also just the the relationship between the two of them is so like violent and ruinous. But as Liliana Cavani said to in response to critics, she said, men and women tear each other apart psychologically every day, all over the world. That's what's happening every day. So what if these two like throw things at each other and like, run around on broken glass? So anyway,
I think often it is not the humanization of evil that disturbs people, but the willing dehumanization, especially of women. That is a thing that people cannot countenance as being realistic. I think this underestimates women and evil.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me, she's the power. As the movie, in the very beginning, you feel when, like, for instance, you feel this fear for her when when they first see each other. It takes quite a while before we understand how this relationship is going to unfold. And she seems afraid of him, but also drawn to him, afraid and drawn. As she goes back and forth and back and forth, she's the one that makes this ultimate decision to really, to go back into the context. So for me, she feels more powerful, far more. She's the most powerful figure in the film, aside from potentially the Countess, who's the other female big character in the film. Is one of the women who lives in the hotel, all of these people are like disgraced Nazis. They live in this hotel. There's also the wonderful ballet we haven't even got to talk about, because I know you guys love dance film. The ballet dancer. Anyway, I'm sure we've gone on for too long, but anyway.
Thank you so much. And we weren't joking when we said there's still horror yet to come.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so shall we move on now to Peter Atkins,
Sure.
to tell us about a wonderful TV series called Ludwig, that is composed, if I'm not wrong, of 6 episodes, but they are going to shoot a second season soon.
I believe so, yeah. Yeah, it's certainly lighter than The Night Porter. But, you know, we all have wide-ranging small C Catholic tastes, I'm delighted to find out. And yeah, Ludwig was a 6-part BBC comedy mystery. I mean, that's really what I want to talk about, the collision of genre in it. But it was a 6-part show from the BBC starring David Mitchell and Anna Maxwell Martin, created by and written by Mark Brotherhood, with whom I wasn't overly familiar, though I gather he'd written on, I think, Death in Paradise and some other British shows. Certainly because of the established persona of David Mitchell, especially in the UK, clearly he's not as well known over here. There is an argument that while it's very much Mark Brotherhood's show, he wrote every episode, there is a little element of actor as auteur in the sense that the character of Ludwig is an exaggeration, a riff on what Mitchell, who wasn't around before I became an expat. His fame in the UK came after me. But I gather a very well-established, curmudgeonly, grumpy, angry, articulate, overly verbal protagonist. So it's, you know, it's a David Mitchell show, even though it's a Mark Brotherhood show. Well, I want to be careful among my peers to be clear that I recognize the writer is the creator. And also, I think Ludwig is an example of a subgenre, which I believe Mr. Stephen Volk characterized, or at least alerted me to this phrase. I think it's your own phrase, Stephen. It's fantastic. And that subgenre is, I believe I'm quoting you correctly, annoying twat turns out to be brilliant detective. And was that yours, Steve? Or
I'll accept it. I'll accept
okay.
it.
And it certainly is, you know, it's a long subgenre. I mean, there's an argument that every fictional detective in prose or film is in fact an annoying twat. But there are some shows or novels that exaggerate the annoyance and make a virtue out of it. But the thing that I enjoyed very much about the show is that I think it's also an exponent of another subgenre, which I'm not sure has a name, but there are recent examples in television and some older examples in literature that I'd like to try and place this show in the context of, which is that unlike a sitcom that impinges on mystery tropes, this is a mystery show. This is a detective show that nevertheless wants us to empathize and enjoy the characters within it in the way in which we normally enjoy and empathize with characters in comedy. So Ludwig is not a, well, I mean, there's no laugh track, for example. You know, unlike David Mitchell's upstart Crow, which is maybe the last show in history to have a laugh track. I don't know if there are still some examples on network TV over here, but this thing where a character is confronted by real crime with real consequences, with real emotional damage for extraneous characters, surrounding characters, and supporting characters, nevertheless carries us through the story in a way that comic characters usually carry us through. We are drawn to, oh, well, I should explain for people who haven't seen it. Ludwig is the pen name or nom de guerre of a crossword puzzle maker played by Mitchell. who, and this does sound so unlikely that it would be more like a sitcom trope than a, who happens to be the identical twin brother of a police detective who, at the beginning of episode 1, has gone missing. And the wife of the police detective, who is this David Mitchell's sister-in-law, wants our hapless hero, who is socially maladjusted to the nth degree, to impersonate his brother and go into the police station and solve the brother's disappearance. As the David Mitchell character points out, aren't I going to be required to do other things while I'm in the police station? And Anna Maxwell Martin waves it off and sends him into this terrible fate. And of course, I was going to say much to our surprise, but in fact, not to our surprise at all, the annoying twat turns out to be an even more brilliant detective than his missing brother. And there's an overarching thing to the show, obviously, which I hope will be resolved in season 2 if it comes back, in which he will emotionally solve the puzzle of himself as he works through these individual cases. But the pleasure one takes in it, I think, is in watching this kind of person who, God knows, in real life probably would be a bit much, if we can use that phrase. But the annoying twats who are brilliant detectives that actually annoy me are I would point to the recent reimaginings of Maigret and Van der Valk, for example, where there are very good-looking, very dour, and very smug lead characters who just piss me off. Whereas the David Mitchell character in Ludwig is, yeah, he's annoying, but he's annoying in the way people we like are annoying. He's overly verbal. He's way too smart for the room. He's got no fucking idea how to behave with people. He's terrible with women. He's terrible with children. He's terrible with his colleagues. And yet we urge him on and wish him the best. And I think there are, I don't know if it's a vogue that's been building for, I don't want to overshoot my time, vogue that's been building for about 15 years in British TV, but I guess, I mean, you could point the finger back maybe to Stephen Moffat and say that his version, or he and Mark Gatiss' version of Sherlock is, in a way, a character who could be in a comedy because of the exaggerated mode of the personality is nevertheless dropped into a very efficient telling of a mystery. There's another contemporary one right now called Death Valley with Timothy Spall, which again is, well, it's not a comedy, it's a mystery show with comic characters working their way through it. And it's a subgenre that I have grown very fond of. And I realized that it's appealing to an older pleasure of mine. And this is, I'm going to point back to fiction now rather than TV. It's like the novels of Rex Stout, the Nero Wolfe novels, because voice is paramount in the Nero Wolfe novels. The Nero Wolfe novels, as I'm sure most of you know, are narrated by Archie Goodwin, who is, it's an insult to say he's the Watson to Nero Wolfe, but he's the Watson to Nero Wolfe. But again, what makes the Rex Stout books so great is that, yeah, they're efficient mysteries and they are solved cleverly and all that stuff. But it's the personalities and specifically the narrative voice. It's like in the same way, you know, the Bertie Wooster novels work not so much because of Jeeves' unflappability, but because of everybody makes this point. This is hardly a new observation, but it's Bertie's voice that propels us with great pleasure through the Jeeves novels. And similarly, Archie Goodwin's voice in the Nero Wolfe novels, coupled with Nero's own irascibility and social maladjustment. Archie is this kind of soft, hard-boiled, whatever you call that, mid-boiled kind of wise guy. And the delight of hearing his voice tell these stories is what drives us through. And I would like to posit that Ludwig is perhaps a late flowering of that kind of melange of mystery and comedy. I would also say, just for honesty's sake, I would probably have picked either Blue Lights or Slow Horses if I wasn't an honest person, because I couldn't pretend that I'd only seen them this year. I love Slow Horses and I love Blue Lights. They're both terrific shows. But Ludwig, I genuinely only saw this year, so I wanted to be truthful to the brief and pick a show that was in fact new to me. So,
thank you for your honesty.
Sure.
We really enjoyed watching this 6-part miniseries. It was really fun.
Good.
And it does seem to be something of a trend in the current time to merge the comedy and
Right.
the mystery. How does that sit for you compared to some of the popular American series right now, like Only Murders in the Building, Man on the Inside?
Sure. I just watched Man on the Inside. I haven't seen season 2 yet. I liked that a lot, but more than I thought I was going to. Again, casting is so important in these things, and everything Harley said about The Diplomat, I agree with. Another show I love. Every member of that cast is pretty fantastic, and Ted Danson's great in Man on the Inside, but I'm ashamed to say I can't remember the name of the lady who plays the detective who gives him a job. But she has this affectless manner, which is just terrific. And I love Only Murders. I really do. Although I do find myself, as each season starts, I find myself in this strange position of analytically thinking, this isn't very good. And my God, I love this. I'm so happy to be in the company of these 3 people again. So yeah, it's a response to the nightmare in which we're all living. I think that we need to add these beautiful people, beautiful misfits, to make us feel less alone.
I always find that very interesting to see that this mix of cozy and funny with murder. I mean, which are supposedly opposite things. And all of this coming from very often the UK, which is probably one of the safest places on the planet. So why are there so many shows about murders in the UK when you hardly have any in the UK ever?
Well, Steve is still resident in the UK, so I don't know. what is it
Agatha Christie, isn't it? It's the Agatha Christie tradition, don't you think? And
sure.
But don't you think your thesis about Ludwig, which I haven't seen, I must see it now, you've prompted me, would you put Monk in that category?
Yeah, very much. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, how is that 20 years old now? I guess it is.
I'm afraid so.
Yeah,
really?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And certainly, oh, you're right. That really is a precursor in which in real life Monk would probably be deemed an annoying twat, but is certainly brilliant. And yeah, the social maladjustment theme is certainly common with Ludwig. And in Moffat's Sherlock, he actually gives him the line, no, I'm not that, I'm a high functioning sociopath. And that sort of self-awareness of what the character is, that embracing of I'm not normal. Inevitably,
isn't it? You think a kind of function of if the character was just super clever,
right?
It'd be quite boring and irritating in itself. So you've got to counterbalance it with some humanizing quality. Maybe not emotional quality, because that's got to be the sidekick. So you're then it's got to be a quirkiness of that doesn't necessarily make them ordinary. So I mean, by logic, kind of forces you to a certain extent in that direction, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Jonathan
no,
Le-
I
Jo-
think so.
Jonathan Lethem wrote a great novel called Motherless Brooklyn. And
Yeah.
that is one of the kind of, to me, one of the founding fathers of this genre in a way, where it's really all about it's the OCD detective, it's the whatever, but their quirks become part and parcel of their method of interacting with the world, and also then finally solving a mystery. It's a wonderful, wonderful book.
Yeah,
great.
no, it's great. I agree.
think
And of course,
in
the
some
pure
ways,
intelligence of the dog in the nighttime as well as another OCD.
yeah. I think in some ways this is like the inverse of the eroticism of competence that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
That if they were just purely competent, so far beyond everyone else.
Yeah.
I think
The competent person as someone you could approach, like romantically is the wrong word, but like to have an eroticism, you have to have an interaction or a hypothetical interaction. And for me, at least, a hyper competent and purely efficient detective is not nearly as they have fewer angles of approach than someone who also is flawed, that allows it allows for an eroticism of competence in a very different way.
Yeah. So we have Columbo and Rockford, same thing.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody, every detective, right?
All of them. Yeah, right.
Even Holmes. I mean,
Yeah, right.
I mean, it used to be an old joke over here that we've moved from cop with a quirk into an era of cop without a quirk.
Yeah, right.
Which was a revolutionary, watermark in the history of crime.
The quirkless
No more quirks. I think there was actually a detective called Quirk.
Well, that's the John Banville books.
Yeah, John Banville, right.
John
Black.
Banville. The Quirk is the pathologist. Those are the Dublin books, although he doesn't use the name John Banville, I think, when he writes them.
Benjamin Black, I think.
Yes, exactly. Benjamin Black. That's a great series of books, and I don't think ever made.
No, Gabriel Byrne, I think.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see them, because
It's
Kate
on,
Atkinson had the great series of books too.
Yeah. Can you get BritBox via Prime, Holly?
Yes. Oh yeah.
I think Quirk is it's either on BritBox or Acorn, one of those.
Oh wow, cool. Okay.
They're not quite as good as the books, in my opinion, Steve. I don't know if you watched, but they are there. So
yeah. All right.
Thank you so much, Peter, for this discussion of Ludwig. And we are moving from a mystery to a crime writer, William Boyle, who is going to tell us about a Belgian film called Ghost Tropic.
Well, thanks for having me. And this is great. I watch a lot, and I haven't seen anything that's been talked about today. Some of it's been on my radar, like The Night Porter, for a long time, but I've never watched it. Nosferatu, I've been meaning to watch and haven't gotten around to. Some of the other stuff I hadn't heard of at all. So it's really nice to hear about all this stuff and to add it all to my watch list. So thanks. And when you guys got in touch with me, I think it was maybe early-ish or mid-September, about doing this. I had just watched this movie Ghost Tropic for the first time, and I think at that point I hadn't seen anything from this year that I would have talked about. Since then, I've seen a lot of stuff from 2025 that I love, and there's more that I'm kind of dying to see. One Battle After Another, like a lot of people, I loved, and probably my favorite movie of the year. The Lowdown, as far as TV shows go, The Lowdown is certainly up there for me too. And a couple of other things I also really like Task and The Chair Company, and some good stuff out there right now. But I'm glad I chose this in that moment. It definitely is my favorite first time watch of the year. Um, I was going to mention I haven't seen the new Lynn Ramsey or Kelly Reichardt movies. I love both of them, and I anticipate those being at the top of any list of favorites of 2025 that I make. But again, I chose this because it was, I think I'd watched it that week before you got in touch with me for the first time. And pretty immediately it became, my film discovery of the year. And I've since watched it again. And it came out, I think it was initially released maybe at like film festivals in 2019, and then got a wider, quote unquote, wider release in 2020. I think that's when it was released here. So obviously, that's probably part of why it kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit. I think it was in America anyway, it was released virtually, at film festivals in like August 2020, during kind of peak COVID times. It was on my radar for a couple of reasons at that time, but I had no way to see it. Um, I was drawn to it first. I can't, some film writer I like must have written about it at the time, which kind of put it on my radar. But I was also drawn to it by the title, which is also the title of an album by one of my favorite musicians, Jason Molina, who performed as Songs Ohia and later the Magnolia Electric Company. He has a great 2000 album called Ghost Tropic. And so I kind of, I wondered if there was any link there. I don't think there is, as far as I know. Maybe there's kind of an atmospheric link, probably between the record and the album, but I've not heard the director talk about being influenced in any way by the album. And then, I put it on my watch list back then and kind of forgot about it. And then somebody, just on Letterboxd, I saw somebody had, this young filmmaker, Brandon Colvin, that I like, had recently watched it for the first time and reviewed it. And so I kind of put it back on my radar. I went, tracked it down. It was, I don't know if you guys, where everybody is, have access to Canopy or what, but it's on Canopy in America, which is really the only way to see it as far as I can tell here. There's no physical release. It's not streaming elsewhere. Maybe it's rentable VOD, I'm not sure, but it's on Canopy. That's where I watched it both times I've seen it. And yeah, it's a pretty simple kind of spare film. I think people kind of talk about it as slow cinema. I'm certainly no expert on that, but I've seen people on Letterboxd describe it as like After Hours if Chantal Ackerman had made it. And I think that's a pretty that's at least again kind of aesthetically that's a pretty good description of what it is. It's about there's not a lot of details in the movie. The simple kind of rundown of it is a 58-year-old woman who works as a corporate cleaner in the city, in Brussels, falls asleep on the metro home, misses her stop, wakes up at the end of the line, and has to get home. She tries calling her son, and can't get through. Tries getting money out of an ATM. Her account is overdrawn. So she kind of, lights out on foot for home, walking through the night and encountering kind of various night people. And so that's kind of the basic setup of it. And you don't really have a lot of details. I mean, like, I think reading about the film afterwards and, I kind of pieced together some stuff. And, Bas de Vos, who's the filmmaker, is a Belgian filmmaker. And so, the city is never really identified, but it's Brussels. I don't even know, I can't remember. I just rewatched it yesterday, and I can't even remember if you ever hear the character's name in the movie. Maybe you do. It's Kadia. I can't remember if I just know that from reading about it, or if she's actually called that at any point in the movie. But you kind of piece some of this together. She's a Maghrebi immigrant, and has lost her husband fairly recently. Um, and again, some of those details are kind of in the movie in various ways, and others are kind of, subtext, I guess. It's a movie that just had a really kind of just unexpected impact on me when I watched it. It's quiet. There's a beautiful score by Emil Brecht, that I've kind of been listening to on repeat for the last couple of months just while I write. And I mean, one of my favorite genres, I think, of fiction and film in general is kind of like that one crazy night sort of thing, like After Hours, or whatever. Something wild, you name it. There's a lot of examples of that sort of thing. This is not that at all. This is kind of a a response almost to that, where it's she doesn't encounter anything crazy, really. I mean, she encounters some tragedy. She encounters some people who want to help her. Mostly that. She kind of, encounters some in very quiet ways, kind of the past, or past lives she's had, or past experiences she's had. And I think one of the things that probably struck me the most about this, and this, again, I'm far from an expert on slow cinema. And I don't know that I'm the person to talk about that at all. But I think my impression anyway is like, for it to work, the images that you're lingering on, and in this movie we linger on a lot of spaces for kind of long stretches. There needs to be some weight there. It can't just be, random. And the way this movie kind of constructs that weight is really impressive to me. Um, it feels almost novelistic. Like, there's so much of her interior world is implied, but never shown in any way. So in a novel, if this was a novel, we would be in her stream of consciousness throughout. We'd be hearing her thoughts about her husband who passed away, and later in the movie, we see her kind of spying on her daughter, who she encounters out with her friends. Um, and it's really kind of powerful to have that interiority just be implied, and to kind of have to imagine it. And that's really, I think, rewatching it yesterday, I think that's kind of what made it work so well for me, and what made it kind of hit so hard for me, and made it such an emotional experience for me. It's also a lot about memory. There's a great little monologue at the beginning, where the film opens on just her living room, and we're kind of in this living room as the light changes for, I don't know, a couple of minutes. And it's a short movie. It's 85 minutes. And then this voiceover kicks in, and it's kind of her, I guess, whispery, and she's saying some stuff about memory and place, and yeah, really, really a beautiful movie, a movie I kind of haven't stopped thinking about. Really incredible lead performance by an actress I didn't really know, and apologize if I get pronunciation wrong on her name, Sadia Bentaib. So much of the movie is her face, and her expressions. And there's not a ton of dialogue in the movie. Very, very kind of quick exchanges. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a lot more to say about it. It's shot beautifully. I think it was shot on 16 millimeter film, and it's presented in. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's like 4:3 aspect ratio, so it's kind of square. Um, and really beautiful cinematography. The cinematographer's name is Grim Van Kerkhove. Really, really beautiful work. And I wasn't familiar with Bas-Devos's films. He's got a few, and stumbled across this one. And I think his most recent film here is currently on the Criterion Channel. I haven't watched it yet, but I plan on watching that and watching some of his earlier films. So yeah, definitely my film discovery of the year. A really beautiful, haunting film, and it does kind of pair well with that Jason Molina Songs Ohia Ghost Tropic record in its way.
Yeah, I think it's a very dreamy film. You really
Yeah.
inside a mood that takes you to a different feeling about time, about how she experiences this walk home that feels very much like, I mean, it's almost like a mythical return. I mean, you think of Ulysses going back to
Yeah.
his original island. And what's interesting is that when she reaches that point, it's cyclical. I mean, she right
Yeah.
away has got to get up to go back to work. So it takes you into a feeling of Brussels that is otherworldly, and also something that is a bit in between, because she herself is of North African origins. And I don't know if you can hear this, but a lot of the people who speak French have got a Dutch accent because of the Flemish population there. So there's all of this that is there below the surface, not explicit, but that plays to this feeling of disorientation that you feel throughout the film.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that. And yeah, and I mean, I think that cyclical quality is also reflected in that final moment with her daughter on the beach, which is, um, I mean, the movie winds up being so much about aging and time. And again, so much of that is just implied through what we're seeing. And, we're not hearing her, talk about this stuff, but that return at the end to the daughter is really lovely too, and I think implies so much of what would be her interior kind of monologue throughout about her whole life, and thinking about her childhood and her marriage, and where she is now. Yeah, and a lot of I mean, I'm sure a lot of that, the language stuff that you mentioned is lost on me, unfortunately, because I'm an idiot. But I can appreciate that for sure.
Well, has anyone else seen or heard about the film here? Or
No. I want to see it now. I love the kind of one night, that kind of narrative structure. Odd Man Out's one of my favorite movies. And the Carol Reed movie does that with James Mason, although he doesn't it's not cyclical for him. But I think Odd Man Out is one like that I have. And also, I just as a writer, I love that idea of you fall asleep in the subway and you end up somewhere else. I mean,
Yeah.
I won't try the French name because I'll get it wrong. Here it's called The Wanderer, that French novel from the 20s, Le Grand Moulin, I think it is. And there's someone who gets in a horse-drawn carriage who is taken to a world of great magic and mystery because they just fell asleep. Yes. They fell asleep in the old horse-drawn carriage and they ended up somewhere completely unexpected. I just love that trope. It's one of my, I think and it sounds here like it's really artfully done in a very kind of subtle way too.
Yeah, I agree. I love it too. And I mean, as somebody, I grew up at kind of the end of southern Brooklyn in New York, near Coney Island, and I used to be in the city in Manhattan a lot, and it was like a 45-minute subway ride home for me, and I'd often fall asleep and wind up at the end of the line at Coney Island and have to have to either walk home if there was no other train or find my way home. So I like that, but I like that this movie really kind of challenge. And I say this as, as a crime writer who, in my own work, I'm often kind of trying to put characters in bad situations and have them encounter bad people and bad, have bad things happen to them. In this movie, it's kind of a relief, that we're so conditioned to expect that and to expect that this journey for her is going to be horrifying. She's going to get something stolen or somebody's going to assault her or, whatever. And this movie just is not that at all. It's really lovely and it never goes to those places. She encounters people only who really want to help her. And that's really nice. It's really nice.
No, it's funny because I Googled to see if there are any other examples of it. And the only thing that came up was a movie called Creep from 2004 with Franca Potent, who apparently falls asleep in the subway station and finds herself trapped by a killer, pursued through the station. That's a slightly different experience, I think.
There's an Australian comedy show called Colin from Accounts. And there's an episode.
That was my pick last year.
There's an episode from season 2 in which the girl falls asleep on the subway train and ends up at the end of. Do you remember it? It's very good. It's one of the best ones episodes, I think.
No, tragically, the woman in that show has been cast in a terrible American sitcom. Speaking of laugh tracks, so I'm not sure what happens to Colin from Accounts now. She's in a show centered at the DMV, of course, where a lot of zany things happen at the motor vehicles department.
I thought I heard that there was a 3rd season coming.
I hope so. I love that show.
Because it's too much of a cliffhanger. Don't tell me there's not going to be any more. My God.
Exactly right.
I mean, Harley, you got us all hooked last year from
podcast,
and now you're disappointing us all.
No, there has to be more. I love that show so much.
Yeah.
But thank you, William. And I'm so glad that you brought this film to our attention because Frank and I haven't heard anything about it. And even though we're geographically closer than you, I do think that, what you mentioned is important about these films that kind of fell through the cracks during COVID. And I'm glad the film is being revisited just a few years later. It really deserves it.
But concerning the availability of the film, I have to say that once you mentioned it, I saw that there's a Blu-ray of the film. We went to La Cinémathèque Française in Paris and we found a Blu-ray. So it is distributed here in Europe.
Oh, nice. That's good to hear because here no physical release, but yeah, it is on Canopy and maybe rentable and yeah, I mean it's especially I think that 2020, 2021, there's so much kind of lost, forgotten stuff that just slipped through.
All right. And last but certainly not least, we are moving back in time to my infancy in 1982 with Stephen Volk, who suggested that we talk about The Entity by Sidney.
Oh, let me say first of all that these recommendations I've heard tonight are really great. I've got some really interesting homework to do. So thank you for those. Well, my choice this time was quite spontaneous, and it's really based on a surprise viewing. I hadn't seen The Entity, even though it's 1982, and my God, it's exactly the sort of thing I should have seen in 1982, around the same time as Poltergeist, I think. Peter will be able to correct me on that if I'm wrong. But anyway, it really took me by surprise. I expected quite a B-movie pot boiler, and I found it actually genuinely creepy and more like Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore than The Omen. I had no idea at the time that Scorsese ranked it as the 4th scariest horror movie of all time, above Psycho and above The Shining. Nor had I seen the review in New York Times at the time that said, thrills in short staccato bursts and dull science in long bursts. And I would have been really attracted to that phrase, dull science in long bursts, because I kind of like dull science in long bursts. At the time, the LA Times said it was a painstaking adaptation of the novel, intense and engrossing battle between psychiatry and parapsychology, with poor Barbara Hershey caught in the middle, which more or less sums the whole thing up. Also, I didn't know that the movie was based on a 1974 case of Doris Bither, or Bither, however you pronounce it, a woman who claimed to have been repeatedly assaulted by an invisible assailant, who underwent observation by doctoral students from UCLA. So this is the character in the film, Carla Moran, as she's called in the screenplay, played by Hershey, sexually attacked and tormented in her home by a poltergeist-like presence, and get this, never fully identified or explained. And this is what stood out to me. The thing has no name, no backstory. It's not even clear if it's a ghost, an incubus, maybe you might think. Could even be an alien, or quite simply something inexplicable or unknown to science. It could even be her repressed fears escaping her head, as the skeptics are not reluctant to tell her. So I liked about this film the naturalism. It was Ramsey, I thought, said about the Moor. He said there's something wrong. He mentioned several times there's something wrong about this film. There's something wrong about the setting. And I felt here there was something wrong in the real world. So there are no explicit kind of horror film references, I thought. It was kind of free of those kind of in-jokes or overwrought melodrama that we more or less take for granted in horror film now. And the film has a kind of matter-of-fact, almost edging on improvisational quality to the proceedings. So she, Barbara, that is, we've known each other for half a page. She seeks help with a shrink called Dr. Snyderman, Ron Silver, and we expect a hero here, and he isn't. He's really off-putting, boorish, borderline unpleasant. In fact, I've written down, you couldn't meet a Snyder man than Dr. Snyderman. He positively oozes the misogyny of the 1970s. And we think, if this is the good guy, where the fuck are we? The subtext is he wants to fuck her rather than help her. And he mansplains her wounds are self-inflicted due to her past trauma. And maybe it is, but his whole presence creates a real unease, and we feel for her, and we're angry about him. So all that stuff is really quite unusual. Her boyfriend, meanwhile, the odious Jerry Anderson, kind of amusingly so called, but Jerry is equally inert. And after witnessing one of her spectral kind of attacks, he can't cope with it at all and ends up kind of jacking in the relationship. Way to go, Jerry. What a hero. Anyway, she's kind of battered and bruised by all this going on. Meanwhile, she's surrounded by the male gaze, including us, the camera, if you like. So there's voyeurism about it, no doubt, all the way through it, which is in itself interesting. But nobody's there to help her. Then the scientists enter the story, and they put it down to mass delusion of the family, her damaged psyche, or sexual frustration. I love scientists in ghost films. I love all the gizmos they bring. I like the electronics. I like the smugness. I like everything about it. But you'll see on screen a pair of scientists who look uncannily like Simon and Garfunkel. But in fact, they're actually the spitting image of Russell Targ and Harold Puthoff, real-life researchers into remote viewing, which is a form of clairvoyance, at Stanford Research Institute. That's just a little footnote I thought might amuse you. Anyway, their motives are even more dubious than Dr. Snideperson. Well, the whole thing kind of escalates. In Act 3, they finally reduce Carla to almost literally a lab rat in a glass cage. Things go batshit crazy in a completely OTT climax. Ron Silver realizes too late she's been telling the truth, but there's a kind of brilliant moment of denial where the scientists refuse to acknowledge they've witnessed anything supernatural, which is a lovely kind of strange moment that, it comes out of left field there, and I really quite like that in the face of everything that's happened, they cling to a vestige of scientific belief. Meanwhile, under the end credits, Carla moves to Texas to get on with her life. And get this, the film reminds us she is still experiencing these attacks. One of the calmest, most haunting, what the fuck moments in horror cinema, that last caption. So to sum up, for all its faults, what I admire about the film is it takes its potentially grubby or even offensive subject matter, and it blurs the boundary between parapsychology and psychology, which is frankly how I like it. One film scholar has called it a parable for female sexual victimhood, quotes, with men undermining her credibility and even sanity, unquote. So it's kind of it's about believing the victim, and it's about the power of authority figures, which I think made it, when I viewed it a few weeks ago, very, very timely. The American film theorist Michael Atkinson praised the film, and he wrote, and I think it's worth me quoting finally, there may not be, outside of David Cronenberg's Wonder Cabinet, a more nitro-powered horror movie metaphor hell than that fueling this post-exorcist remnant. It's like the movie is writing its own library of fiery feminist theory. It remains unnerving and savage, arguably the most eloquent movie ever made in Hollywood about the struggle of the sexual underclass. So I like that about it. I think he caught part of why it really took me by surprise. And I found it bold, kind of unvarnished, slight, gritty, and in the kind of jaded, slightly too packaged kind of climate of so much modern horror, I found it kind of chillingly refreshing. So that was my impression of the entity. Anyone else seen it? Anyone else have an opinion on it?
Again, as with Night Porter, I saw it in 1982. Stephen, I remember I remember very little about it. I remember feeling uncomfortable, and this plays exactly to what you're talking about. I mean, Barbara Hershey is so attractive, and the voyeuristic aspects of the unpleasant assault scenes,
absolutely,
but nevertheless, they had this sort of erotic underpinning, and I remember feeling ashamed by how much I was kind of looking. But I remember it being much better than people told me it was, and sadly
that's what took me completely.
Yeah.
What struck me when we watched it in preparation for this episode are the similarities with Twin Peaks, which is pretty much similar. I mean, it is.
Have you seen Twin Peaks, Frank?
I think I have a vague memory of the.
Oh, Steve.
No, but I mean, this time it actually makes sense for me to call Twin Peaks, I think, in relationship with the entity, because actually there is a scene in the film when they mention the book Psychic Self-Defense by Diane Fortune, and Harley might correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Mark Frost names this book as one of the books that led him or influenced him when he co-created. So
I think that's true.
And Frank and I were also talking about this period, maybe between the 1980s and the 1990s, this shift in terms of recognizing violence within the home and starting to really transmit more of these stories about domestic violence and how the inside the home can be such a very ugly and tormented place for so many people. And I felt that this film, in a way, kind of kicked off a decade of beginning to talk about those types of topics in moving images. So it was really interesting to revisit this in relationship to, say, a decade later.
I think you could do a comparison with Poltergeist. I think they did come out in the same year, and the domestic upheaval of both very different styles of movie, I think. So it would be a good comparison.
Yeah. Definitely feel the impact of Poltergeist there, I think. But what I found also very interesting is that they create this replica of the home to create an experiment for her, and that becomes very abstract, very almost like a performance. And as you said, there is something about the voyeurism of the audience that is omnipresent in this film.
Yes, you're right. It's kind of levels within levels, because the film up till then is also a construction that we've been watching. So here we are, the kind of
Right.
the scientific family, which is you could say surrogate of the film crew making the film, are making a reality within that reality. So it kind of, what's the reality within that? It's like that old thing about the cornflake packet with the drawing on it with someone holding a cornflake packet, and there's the picture on the cornflake
Right.
packet of someone, so on and so forth, or the doll's house within the doll's house within the
Right.
doll's house.
They call them, in comic book collector nerd world, they're called infinity covers.
Are they?
It was a trope they
Oh.
used to do a lot. Superman would hold the issue of Superman, picturing
Oh
Superman
God, that's
holding
great.
the issue.
I didn't know that
And
was a thing. Gosh.
yeah, infinity covers. And some nerds specifically collect only infinity cover comics. So takes all sorts, right?
Well, with that,
Well, it sounds like the Entity will pair well with Demon Seed, the Julie Christie movie.
Oh yeah.
Where
Yes, that's right.
where there is an AI who seems to want to do the same thing as the Entity does.
Yeah. I'd forgotten that one.
Yeah.
Do you remember
Well,
what?
there's a
It's
whole
based on a
thing.
Dean Koontz, isn't it? Dean Koontz novel, I
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if someone brought me something wanted me to look at something for work called the Puppet Masters. Are you familiar with this at all? And it started in the 80s, and they made like 15 of these movies. But it started in the 80s, and I said to the guy, it just reminds me of the golden age of horny horror. Because that's really, there was a whole lot of that going on. And even something like The Entity and certainly Demon Seed, that was sort of weirdly the point that's then late. Now you look at it now, and it does seem dated for that reason.
Yeah.
But interesting, yeah.
But I thought it was quite provocative in the way that Jen talked about the Night Porter, more so than I was thinking of
Right.
the kind of salacious aspect of Demon Seed. But maybe I haven't seen Demon Seed in many years. But there was a provocation in that is implied in the very being of the Night Porter. That's a kind of challenge to your sensibility in the way that also I think the Entity was like. Which I think is it's a pity Ramsey's not here, because one of my favorite Ramsey quotes was horror is the business of going too far, and I think that's what I felt about the Entity. I felt at times, is this going too far? And I had to remind myself of Ramsey's quote.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it sounds. I have not seen the Entity. I did see the Demon Seed. I'd forgotten about the Demon Seed. But I have not seen the Entity. But yeah, I love the audience within the audience. I mean that is also just a huge aspect of the Night Porter. There are people watching everything that happens in that play. There's an audience in every level. There's an audience and an audience in the camp, in the hotel, in the audience, the viewer. So it's very into this.
It's a great device, even if it's subconscious, of making the audience complicit in what they're watching. And maybe they don't realize they're being made complicit, but I think they kind of carry it away.
Yeah.
We really appreciate all of your recommendations, your reviews and commentaries tonight. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to After Images. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app and follow After Images podcast on social media.
After Images.